We start a new series today called Can We Talk? And of course, when we talk, we need air. And we need to be able to breathe. So as we start today off, let me start with this. Take a deep breath. Everybody take a deep breath. Now take another. And take one more. And try to take a fourth one. Can anybody do it? No, you cannot do it. Somebody shook their head. You can't. Try to take 4 breaths in a row. Give it a try. You can't do it, right? If you only breathe in, you die within like 2 minutes or something, right? You suffocate. Now, we're talking about can we talk? And I'm asking you to think about breathing. Here's why. When we think about discipleship in the church, especially, let's pick on ourselves for a second, especially churches like ours, we can have a bias when we come to a series like Can We Talk, which is going to be 4 weeks on how we communicate to each other, and we can say, that's fluff. They don't go deep enough in the church. And yet, in my opinion, the deepest sermons, the deepest messages are the ones that teach us and talk about how we love and respect each other. See, we can do the thing, and we've done the thing, and I'll do the thing again, where we're talking about love, and I give you all the Greek words for love. And I tell you what all the Greek words for love mean. And let's give the Greeks a little props right now, by the way. They do a better job of defining love than we do. Because we have one word that means sexual love, friendship love, love in a family, love between friends, and how we're called to serve. And the Greeks break all those up. But if I can paraphrase everybody's favorite wedding chapter of the Bible, 1 Corinthians 13, if I know all the Greek words for love, can tell you their subparts, can conjugate the verb in all tenses, but don't know how to love anybody, I'm nothing and worthless. We're going to spend 4 weeks talking about how to talk to each other. And it will probably be the deepest we go in discipleship over the next 52 weeks. Not that we don't need to spend 10 weeks on the Gospel of Luke like we did in the summer. Not that we don't need to spend 8 weeks on the book of Acts, which we will do in 2019. We need to do that because we need to understand. But never kid yourself that that's the meat and this is the fluff. This is the meat. And why? Why is this the meat? You know, when we're teenagers, a part of being a teenager is that you can spot hypocrisy from 5 miles away. It's built into you. It's just part of being a teenager. Nothing wrong with that. It's good. We need hypocrisy spotters, and we thank God for teens who just are cued in on that. But I think about my own teenage years and the recent, the recent hearings that went on in Washington hit close to home for me because the people who were testifying about teenage parties were a few years younger than me. So I was in that era, and I was going to Catholic schools, not quite as ritzy as the ones they were going to, but I was going to Catholic schools in that era, and I remember those parties they were talking about. And as a kid, I remember those parties Or you don't. Or you don't. I was there. That's a true statement. Called out by my wife, which we'll be talking about in just a little bit, but, right? And so that hypocrisy always kind of stuck in the back of my mind, like, geez, we say we're Christians, are we really? But it wasn't my peers who, like me, who were engaging in all that craziness. It was when I saw parents who didn't live up to their Christian faith and their Christian ideals that I just, it turned me off. I'm a pastor now, but at the time, it turned me off to church. And we often want to say what turns kids off to church is all these theological issues, right? What turns most kids off to church is Christians who don't live like Christians. And they say, if that's what it is, I don't want to be a part of that. For me, the biggest, again, because as a teenager, it's just part of growing up, guys. It's nothing wrong with teenagers, but they are cued in to see where's the hypocrisy, which is good because then they learn, hopefully, not to be hypocritical as they get older. But boy, my one buddy's friend, I had a lot of good examples of Christian men who I could have looked to. My one buddy's dad was a judge, very nice guy. I was a terrible golfer, and when we went golfing, he let me be his partner, and he was a great golfer. He's like, and he was like, I'll take Muzzy. He was always like, hey, okay, you can be on my team, right? Great guy, and man of God. But my other brother's friend, who I don't think he ever showed up in an AA meeting, but was obviously an alcoholic, clearly abused my friend. In this day and age, there would have been a call to the cops, and there would have been all sorts of stuff. In that day and age, when my buddy needed to get the blood off of his jacket from the beating, the two of us just walked to the dry cleaner. And the dry cleaner didn't say, why do you got blood on your jacket? They just took the blood off his jacket and gave him his jacket back. And that's what stuck in my mind. If that's Christianity, I don't want to be any part of it. So how we treat each other, who we are, it makes a difference. And if we want to have the debate about why kids are leaving church, the first place we start is our witness good and right and healthy and on? And are we loving as we're being called to love? One guy, Jonathan Merritt, who grew up in the church, has done work as a pastor, now he's doing work as a writer, sets it up like this, right? Christianity is best seen as a lived practice and example rather than a lecture. It means that Christianity is made credible by works of love, compassion, service. Like how we live is more important than do we know all the different definitions of the word love in Greek. So we come to this Can We Talk? And we want to have some, as serious as it is, talking about walking home with my buddy from the dry cleaner, we do want to be able to laugh a little bit in this series, and we do want to be able to poke fun at ourselves a little bit in this series. And so one of the things, it's good for teens to have that hypocrisy lens and to be able to point that out and be able to call that out. But then as we grow past that, we recognize, right? We recognize our own imperfections. We recognize our own fallenness. We recognize all the ways we screw it up. And so hopefully we get to the place where we can just take a deep breath and we say, you know, I know why Jesus focused so much on forgiveness. Because I need it. And the funny thing is so does the person sitting next to me right now. And the person sitting next to them. and the person sitting next to them. God focuses on forgiveness because he knows we'll need it, and we know we need to offer it to each other. So today we want to get real. And let's do that by getting the foundation. As a church family, it's 8, 9, 10 years ago now, we put together something called Commit to Grace. And Commit to Grace is just, this is how we're going to treat each other. This actually started out being called the Agreement to Disagree in Love. It was that for a couple of years, and then we thought, that is the most wordy, stupid title that we've ever come up with. Can we come up with something better? Right? That you got to be able to laugh at yourself. Because there's a lot of comic material there for most of us. So we changed it to Commit to Grace. And it means that we commit to who we say we are. We say we follow the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who brings love into the world. We commit to being people who bring love into the world. And so in it, it says this: we recognize that conflict is normal and inevitable in any size group of people and will happen in the church. It's going to happen right among us. We're not always going to get along. We're not always going to agree. We're not always going to see the same solutions to problems. So what do? We pledge to work through conflicts using the following biblical guidelines. And so on this sheet are all the things that we'll do, the ways that we prepare ourselves when we're in conflict, the ways that we carry out conflict, what we do if we need extra help. It's all in here. As you walk out the door today, Sharon, hold those up for a sec. She's grabbing them before the service is over. That's okay. You can grab one of these on the way out if you don't have one. I know if you've been at Crossroads for any length of time, you have one, and when I come over, you put it on your refrigerator to let me know that it's there, that you've got it, and you use it. So that's cool. So grab one of these if you don't have it. But let's talk about those biblical guidelines. And we go to the book of Ephesians. Paul's talking to his friends in the town of Ephesus, and he sets it up like this: as a prisoner for the Lord, then I urge you. See, this is that we don't want to ruin other people's understanding of Christianity by how we live our lives. So what does he say? I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. So be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Today, I just want to lay just a real general foundation for that. And then next week, we'll talk about listening. The week after that, we'll talk about integrity and how you commit to integrity and the steps that you take in that. And then the final week, we'll talk about clean fighting, in which, and Joanna and I will do our best to have a clean fight in front of you. If it breaks down, you guys can... We'll see how that one comes out. We're still working on it, all right? So here's the key for this series, and I think the key for this idea of committing grace. The first key is, now hear what I'm saying here. We want to seek to understand. Most of the time, when we are in an argument with somebody else, what are we seeking? We are seeking the words to help them understand our position. We're seeking to be understood. Okay? That's what we're doing. I need you to see things the way I see things. Now, there was a great saint of the church, a guy by the name of Francis. And Francis is famous for this prayer. And those days when I was turned off to church because of the hypocrisy I saw in myself, in my friends, But the biggest killer of all was the adults who claimed Christ around me. The one prayer I did every night was the prayer of St. Francis. And the reason why I did it every night, it was a song when I was a kid. So I could sing it and I could remember it. And so even in those few years when I wouldn't even go to church, I was so turned off. My head would hit the pillow and I'd say, all right, God, I got to talk to you before the day's over. And then I would say, make me a channel of your peace. And see, so I'm just giving you a little bit. It goes like this. Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. So, not so much seek to be understood as to understand. We live in a world, and it's not new that we live in this world, because we've lived in this world for as long as I can remember. And from the days when I studied history and taught history, I can't find a time we weren't like this. We live in a world where we see things one way, and we demand that everybody sees things our way. And Richard Rohr, who's a great spiritual teacher and leader, right? He writes it like this. I'm sure you know that most people do not see things as they are. They see things as they are. Did you catch that? People do not see things as they really are. They see things as they are through their lenses and through their ideas. Which is why when you've tried to have that political discussion and you say, I just can't understand the way that person thinks. You're right. You can't. So that's why you take a step back and you say, okay, how do you see the world? What values are important to you? How are you, right? So, and he just says, take that as a given. Take that as a given that people do not see things as they are. They see things as they are. That's just basic human nature. So if we start there, then we can seek to understand each other more, and it can take the tension out, because it's not, I don't expect you to see things the way I do. I get that you don't. And you probably never will. Now, here's the beauty of the church. See, you know me, I'll try to stay off the soapbox for too long. This is why politics will never, ever solve our problems or work, ever. Because what politics, it is designed to split us apart. And the way God set it up is not that it's supposed to be a competition between your ideas and my ideas, and if I'm stronger, I win. The way God set it up is my ideas are incomplete without your ideas, and we need each other. And I need to listen to you. And I need to be connected to you. And we need to be one. Not win. Politics is all about winning. Christ is all about oneness and unity. Right? So that's why it'll never work. Okay, I'm back to the message. All right, so key for this series, seek to understand. And so the second thing we do is we laugh. We laugh mostly at yourself. Mostly at ourselves. So now, you know, they say that most married couples, don't learn how to fight fairly until 7 to 10 years in their marriage. 7 to 10. Some of you who have not made it that far, you're like, that might make sense to me. For Joanne and I, it maybe took us 25. But, fair, right? Because the reason why it took us longer is because we're both kind of pig-headed. And so we weren't willing to give up, right? We weren't willing to give in on the positions. Now, let me just do another little 7 to 10 years, right? The average first marriage that divorces ends after 8 years. It takes you a year to go through a divorce. So people are giving up right at that point where maybe they had an opportunity to get it. So let me give you an example from the slow learners in the room, Joanne and I. All right? So when we first, our argument, so let me just pause for a second. So all week I'm saying to Joanne, there has to be a video clip for this point of the message. Movies do this stuff all the time. We need a good video clip. Couldn't find one, looked, nothing was coming to mind. And then we're just like, our life is pretty much that video clip, all right? So why don't we just do that? So here's from our life. So the arguments used to look like everybody else's argument. Fill in the blank, right? Why didn't you ... Subcontext, if you really loved me, you would have ... You must not really love me. Why am I the only one who cares about ... Okay, so that's how our argument started. And you know where they go from there, right? You get defensive. And this isn't just marriage, right? This can happen in work relations, friendships, parent, child, all over the place, right? So if I get and I threw those out as much as she threw them out, right? But if I get why didn't you ... My response was, why is it never enough for you? Don't you know I did? Now here comes my list. I did ... You didn't say anything about that. And off we go to the races. Some of you have gone off on these races yourself, okay? So then we started, okay, obviously that wasn't working, okay? So here came the next one. We used to make a joke. We started to make a joke, and the joke went like this. When someone would say, why didn't you ... you would break the tension by making a joke, and the joke was, I'm sorry I didn't meet the expectations you didn't lay out for me, right? It was a good comeback, a little bit less defensive, little bit, all right? and we interject a little sarcasm, so we're laughing now, and that breaks the tension a little bit, okay? So that was the first level of the joke. I'm sorry I didn't meet the expectations you didn't lay out for me. Then the other person could recognize, okay, that's fair. Here's what I need. Here's why I'm upset, and it would, okay? But then as we, got even farther along, we could start recognizing interjecting that humor got us to the next level of humor where we could just make fun of ourselves. So when I'm mad that ... or Joanne is mad that ... getting done, we'll introduce the conversation so that we can have a conversation. We'll introduce it with this joke. Thank you for not meeting the expectations I didn't lay out for you. And then you can say, okay, what didn't I do? And see, the joke then becomes you start pointing the finger back at yourself. You start having a little bit of fun because you recognize, because this is about being real, right? Conflict will happen. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. What's the difference between good marriages and bad marriages? Good marriages stay together. In other words, everything in bad marriages and good marriages, people just keep working through. So that works for friendships, that works for work relationships, that works for, right, all relationships. Okay, so so first thing we want to do is we want to seek to understand, we want to laugh, and when we can laugh at ourselves, it makes it a lot easier to apologize. That was really unrealistic of me to, right? I'm expecting this of you. I didn't even say anything. I got mad and it's about nothing, and I'm sorry. That was just stupid of me to say that. And this is where, let's go back for a second to our friends from AA because we did that. If you were with us in September and we looked at that series, Getting Back to the Routine, we used those 12 steps to kind of help us out, right? But their step 10 that's used in AA is perfect on this, right? Continue to take a personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Now, my friend's father, who I told you about earlier, needed AA meetings. He needed anger management. He needed a whole bunch of things. But if I would have seen him, and probably if his son would have seen him, say, I need some help. I'm sorry. The authenticity of that, the realness of that, would have had a huge impact on me, certainly on his kids. Right? When we can say, I was wrong. And that's it. Not I was wrong, and then a big, long explanation. Just, I was wrong. And I'm sorry. And you put a period on that. That's real. And that's a good witness. We think the witness is being perfect. The witness isn't being perfect. The witness is being real. You're going to screw up. I'm going to screw up. By the end of today, in my case, probably, right? If we apologize. And then, so when we're laughing, we're apologizing, it becomes really easy to forgive. Because then we can say, oh yeah, you're just like me. You screw up too. You're not perfect either. So, and of course, we go to Jesus, right? We go back to Paul, the verses that we've been looking at today, go a little bit farther into chapter 4. Here it is again. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. When I recognize my need for forgiveness, I can give forgiveness. So here's our big overview for the next 4 weeks. Seek to understand, laugh, apologize, forgive. So next week we'll take a look at then how we listen better, with that as our underlying piece, right? That we're seeking understanding. Not taking ourselves seriously. We're ready to give an apology. We're ready to forgive. And then the week after that, we'll take a look at integrity and how we keep integrity in our relationships. So the problem that I talked about earlier isn't indicative of our lives. And then finally, we'll talk about, okay, so what would a clean fight even look like? Okay? So for this morning, as we go, where are you being called to seek to understand? And I went back and forth between where and who, you know. So if you want to use who are you being called to seek to understand? It might be an individual, but it might be something bigger, okay? One thing I want to leave us with as we look at this, okay? As we look at the headlines of the week, as we look at what happened yesterday, evil will show its ugly face, okay? So when we seek to understand, the guy who did what he did yesterday in that synagogue yesterday was a very disturbed individual. And he took his disturbance and he attached it to anti-Semitism. Earlier in the week, we saw a very disturbed person attach their disturbing it right to partisanship. It was a small event, but it was a race. There was an incident at a Kroger where a white supremacist, shot 2 black people. So all 3 of those cases, you have a very disturbed individual taking their disturbance and attaching it to an idea. When we seek to understand that, I don't mean to oversimplify, but that's evil. All 3 cases. That's evil. And so what we do with evil as a society is, right, we take that evil, and if we can catch the people, we put them in prison. That's to protect them and to protect us. That's to protect them. Because every time they're allowed to act out on their evil in society, they do damage to their own souls. And if we can protect them from themselves, then they might have a chance at getting there, all right? At getting to the healing that they need. So I don't mean to simplify and say it's easy to understand those, but in some sense, that's just evil. Not just evil. But see, what Satan wants us to do is over-focus on that. It always kills me. Again, I'm going on my soapbox again. It always kills me when they're like, it doesn't matter what the thing was. What was their motivation? It's the same motivation every time. They're evil. It doesn't matter if they attach it to Islam, anti-Semitism, white supremacy, partisanship. It's evil every time. But see, what Satan will do is he'll keep us focused on that, and then we won't talk to the person sitting right next to us who we've got, right? And if all the people sitting right next to each other can come together and be one together, then we're one, then we're united as one, and then we together have a shot at defeating evil. It's a trick to get you to focus on the carnival show of these idiots and be separated from the person right next to you, right in your church family. But when we're one, evil never wins. Never, ever wins. And we take those people and we find those people and we separate them, and then we get them the help that they need from behind really strong bars and walls so that they don't do more damage to their own souls. So, it's a soapbox type of day, guys. Sorry. Where are you being called to seek to understand? Where are you being called to seek to understand? Who are you being called to seek to understand? Go local. Go local, okay? Go close. Go close. Because that's how we overcome evil.